The galaxy had been under the iron grip of the Galactic Empire for countless generations. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen under its shadow, and its authority seemed absolute. Ships bearing the Empire's emblem dominated the space lanes. Fleets patrolled the borders of countless star systems, and the mere mention of the Empire inspired fear in all corners of known space. Its officers were meticulously trained, its soldiers disciplined to perfection, and its bureaucrats ruthless in maintaining control. Yet for all its strength, the Empire had grown complacent, confident that no force could ever challenge its supremacy. Then, from the edge of the galaxy, came the humans. At first, their arrival barely registered in Imperial intelligence reports. A small fleet of odd-shaped starships emerged from a remote system known to the Empire as the Fringe World of Terra Nova. These ships were unlike anything the Imperial Navy had encountered. Their hulls were utilitarian rather than sleek, their designs cobbled together with ingenuity rather than engineered perfection. Imperial scouts described them as underpowered, poorly armed, and insignificantly manned. They carried weapons that on paper could not match the destructive output of the Empire's advanced energy cannons. Their armor was thin, their defenses rudimentary. Imperial officers were unanimous in their judgment. These humans were inconsequential, a minor curiosity not worthy of immediate attention. High Counselor Zeldran, seated in the glass-enclosed command chamber aboard the Empire's flagship, waved dismissively at the reports. "Another primitive species poking at the edges of our domain. Nothing to concern ourselves with," he said. He ordered the fleet's attention redirected to a more pressing border skirmish, confident that the humans posed no real threat. Meanwhile, within the human fleet, a very different atmosphere prevailed. Commander Isaac Rourke, a veteran of countless minor skirmishes on the fringes of human space, understood that appearances could be deceiving. He surveyed the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, and observed the crew preparing for their first interactions with the Empire. They were not nervous, nor were they overconfident. Humans, Rourke believed, had a unique quality, a blend of ingenuity, adaptability, and an indomitable spirit that often defied expectation. Unlike the Empire, humans did not measure strength solely by technology or firepower. They measured it by creativity, resourcefulness, and the ability to improvise under pressure. The first human actions in the Empire's space were subtle, almost innocuous. They began to salvage derelict orbital stations and abandoned defense satellites, repairing and upgrading them using a mix of salvaged materials and human engineering ingenuity. Old hyperspace routes, considered too dangerous or useless by the Empire, were mapped and optimized by humans, creating new trade and supply channels that allowed them to operate far from their home systems with remarkable efficiency. To Imperial observers, these activities appeared as minor logistical maneuvers, nothing that could threaten the established order. Yet every station repaired, every ship rebuilt, every route optimized became a strategic asset, a foothold in enemy territory that no one anticipated. Humans worked in ways the Empire could not predict. Where Imperial forces relied on meticulous planning, humans embraced improvisation. Where the Empire saw vulnerability, humans saw opportunity. They were patient and unassuming, operating quietly while setting the stage for something far greater. By the time the Empire realized the humans' presence was more than a passing curiosity, the humans had already woven a network of influence across multiple star systems, a network that could withstand sudden assaults and exploit weaknesses in ways the Empire had never considered. This underestimation was precisely what gave humans their advantage. Imperial officers assumed they were dealing with a conventional species, one that would eventually confront them according to expected rules of engagement. Humans, however, played by no one's rules but their own. Their strength lay in their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to persevere against seemingly insurmountable odds. Every minor success they achieved, every abandoned station they reclaimed, reinforced their position and demonstrated a principle the Empire had long forgotten. Power was not defined by status or appearance, but by the ability to act decisively in the face of uncertainty. The Empire had dismissed the humans at first, but reports of their rapid expansion and strategic acquisitions could no longer be ignored. Abandoned orbital stations were reclaimed, derelict ships converted into modular warcraft, and remote systems quietly integrated into a human-controlled network. The Empire, confident in its overwhelming might, decided it was time to confront these interlopers directly. They dispatched a fleet of 60 battlecruisers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, armed with devastating energy cannons, reinforced hulls, and thousands of battle-hardened crew members, to the human-held system of Cerulean 9. Imperial commanders expected an easy victory. To them, humans were weak and predictable. "Their ships are poorly armed and under-armored," General Vrylox had reported. "This will be a routine operation. There is no risk of significant resistance." But the humans operated under an entirely different paradigm. Commander Isaac Rourke, aware of the Imperial fleet's approach, gathered his officers on the bridge of the Indomitable. Calmly, he explained his strategy. "We don't match them ship for ship. We turn what they see as our weaknesses into our greatest advantage." As the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace, the humans were already ready. They had carefully studied the terrain of Cerulean 9's asteroid belt, its dense network of rocks and debris forming a natural labyrinth. Rather than meet the enemy in open space where firepower dominated, Rourke led the humans to lure the Imperial fleet into the asteroid field. To the Empire, this seemed illogical. A small, weak fleet had no hope in such an environment. Yet humans were masters of adaptation. They had turned every asteroid into a potential ambush point, every shadow into concealment, and every maneuver into a trap. When the battle began, the difference between humans and the Empire became starkly clear. Imperial battlecruisers advanced confidently, their energy cannons glowing ominously. One by one, they struck hidden mines placed by humans weeks before, unaware of their existence. Ships were immobilized, their hulls cracked under precision. Strikes delivered by small, nimble human vessels darting in and out of the asteroid maze. Boarding parties moved silently, taking control of disabled vessels and turning the Empire's own machines against them. Imperial officers were stunned. Every attack they launched was anticipated, countered, or exploited. The humans were not fighting like a conventional fleet. They fought like a living organism, constantly adapting, improvising, and learning in real time. They exploited weaknesses that the Empire hadn't even realized existed. Where the Imperial fleet relied on predictability, humans thrived on chaos, creativity, and initiative. The psychological impact was immediate. Imperial captains, trained to expect obedience and conformity, found themselves reacting to maneuvers that no protocol could anticipate. Orders were delayed or misinterpreted because the humans did not behave predictably. In several instances, entire squadrons of Imperial ships were immobilized simply because they became ensnared in the human-designed traps, unable to respond effectively to unconventional tactics. By the end of the engagement, the outcome was astonishing. Out of 60 battlecruisers, 20 had been destroyed or disabled, while the human fleet emerged unscathed. Imperial officers struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. "How can such small, underarmed vessels defeat our most powerful ships?" Zeldron demanded. The answer, which he refused to accept at first, lay not in weapons or armor, but in human ingenuity, adaptability, and sheer unpredictability. The first clash also revealed something deeper about humanity. They did not fight merely to survive or dominate. They fought with an almost playful determination, improvising in ways that shocked their adversaries. Where the Empire saw rules, humans saw options. Where the Empire saw weakness, humans saw opportunity. The engagement at Cerulean 9 was not just a tactical victory, it was proof that humans could defy expectations and rewrite the rules of warfare itself. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, rumors of the battle began to spread. Alien species who had long bowed to the Empire whispered in disbelief about the humans who had bested the most powerful fleet they had ever known. The Empire's image of invincibility began to crack. Humans had not only won a battle, they had shattered the illusion of absolute dominance. The victory at Cerulean 9 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had relied on the fear it inspired to maintain control over countless star systems. Its power seemed absolute, and its enemies, whether rebellious, planets, or minor civilizations, had long learned that defiance was futile. Yet the humans, a species the Empire had dismissed as inconsequential, had done the impossible. They had shattered the myth of invincibility. News of the humans' victory spread quickly, aided by networks of traders, scouts, and independent observers. Across distant systems, whispers became murmurs, and murmurs became proclamations. Stories emerged of small, unarmored human ships outmaneuvering Imperial battle cruisers, of entire enemy vessels commandeered and turned against their own fleets, and of humans operating in ways that defied the logic of conventional warfare. Alien species, long subservient or fearful, began to view humanity not as a threat, but as a symbol of hope. Commander Isaac Rourke understood the psychological dimension of warfare as well as the tactical. He knew that humans' victories were not just about destroying ships, they were about sending a message. In every system they entered, Rourke addressed human colonies and allied populations, emphasizing one principle: we are underestimated. Let them see what happens when the underdog fights with courage and cunning. His speeches were not merely motivational, they were a call to action, a rallying cry that turned fear into inspiration. Meanwhile, the Empire grew increasingly desperate. Their attempts to crush the humans with traditional force were failing, spectacularly. Entire Imperial fleets had been humbled and their prestige began to erode. Alien species that had once relied on Imperial protection started to reconsider their alliances. If the humans could stand against the Empire, what hope did these allies have of relying on Imperial authority? Doubt began to seep into even the most loyal governors' minds. The humans continued their unconventional strategies. On the battlefields of systems like Taranth 7 and Valora 12, they employed tactics that confounded the Empire. Electromagnetic pulses disabled entire sections of enemy ships, while small strike teams infiltrated heavily defended vessels and turned their own weapons against them. Humans made use of biological decoys, guerrilla-style maneuvers, and improvised war machines constructed from salvaged enemy technology. Each encounter reinforced the growing legend that humans could turn any situation to their advantage, no matter how dire it seemed. One of the turning points came during the defense of Vespera Prime, a critical trade hub on the edge of the Empire's territory. The Empire dispatched over a dozen warships to capture it, expecting an easy conquest. The humans, with only a fraction of the firepower, prepared elaborate defensive measures. They mined the planet's orbit, employed rapid hit-and-run attacks, and leveraged their intimate knowledge of the terrain to control every engagement. By the end of the conflict, not only had the Imperial fleet been repelled, but the humans had captured two of the Empire's most advanced vessels intact, turning them into assets for future campaigns. The consequences extended beyond tactical victories. Systems previously loyal to the Empire began to defect voluntarily. Planets that had quietly resented Imperial control saw humans not as conquerors, but as liberators. They provided intelligence, ships, and resources, swelling the human fleet without a single traditional battle. Humanity's momentum was now both military and political. The Empire, accustomed to ruling through fear and coercion, found that the more they tried to assert dominance, the faster their control eroded. Rourke recognized that this period marked a critical turning point. Victory at Cerulean 9 had shown humans could defeat the Empire tactically, but the real success was the way they inspired confidence and loyalty across the galaxy. While the Empire relied on rigid hierarchies, humans relied on flexibility, creativity, and adaptability. Their successes undermined the Empire's narrative of inevitability. Where the Empire demanded obedience, humans inspired initiative. Where the Empire crushed dissent, humans cultivated loyalty. The first phase of the turning point was complete. Humans were no longer merely defending their territory, they were actively reshaping the political landscape of the galaxy. Alien systems that once feared imperial reprisal now secretly or openly supported humanity. The balance of power had begun to shift. By combining tactical genius, improvisation, and moral authority, humans had become a force that the Empire could neither predict nor control. By the time humans had solidified their presence in multiple systems, the cracks in the Galactic Empire were no longer hidden. What had begun as isolated victories and clever maneuvers had escalated into a systemic collapse of imperial authority. The Empire, long confident in its unassailable power, now faced a force that could not be understood, predicted, or contained. Commander Isaac Rourke and his fleet, though far outnumbered, had shifted the battlefield from one of raw firepower to a war of ingenuity, influence, and morale. The first signs of collapse were political. Alien governors and sector administrators, who had long benefited from imperial protection and bureaucracy, began to reconsider their loyalties. These officials had always accepted imperial dominance because resistance seemed futile. But the humans' victories demonstrated that the Empire was not invincible. Planets that had quietly harbored resentment now openly defected to the human side. Ships, resources, and intelligence flowed to Rourke's command, not through coercion, but through admiration and hope. Humans inspired trust in a galaxy long governed by fear. Rourke's strategy went beyond military conquest. Humans were careful to present themselves not as conquerors, but as liberators. When alien worlds submitted to human authority, they were treated fairly, given autonomy, and integrated into the human network of alliances. This approach had a cascading effect. The more humans advanced, the more systems defected willingly, reducing the Empire's ability to respond effectively. Each defection weakened imperial morale and spread doubt across the ranks. Soldiers and officers who had once been loyal began questioning their purpose, and some even abandoned their posts to join the human coalition. Meanwhile, the Empire attempted desperate measures to regain control. Massive fleets were dispatched to recapture lost territories and punish defecting systems. These fleets, heavily armed and confident, assumed humans would be defeated easily once again. However, they were met with tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. Humans turned abandoned stations, asteroid fields, and even civilian infrastructure into defensive strongholds. They used the Empire's own technology against it, commandeering vessels mid-battle and redirecting attacks. Every imperial advance was met with asymmetric strategies that capitalized on human adaptability and unpredictability. One of the pivotal moments came at the Battle of Klystron Prime. The Empire sent a fleet of 80 warships, intending to crush the human resistance in a decisive engagement. Humans, with only 30 ships and a few hundred fighters, orchestrated a stunning series of maneuvers. They lured the fleet into an unstable nebula, rich with ion storms and gravitational anomalies. The humans exploited these hazards systematically, disabling ships while minimizing their own exposure. By the end of the engagement, the Imperial fleet was shattered, and several key commanders had been killed or captured. The psychological impact was devastating. The Empire had relied on fear as its primary weapon, but fear turned to confusion, then to despair. No system was truly safe from human ingenuity. If a fleet of 80 warships could be destroyed by a fraction of its number, what hope did anyone have of resisting? This fear was compounded by the Empire's inability to adapt to human tactics. Its rigid hierarchies, reliance on predictable procedures, and overconfidence in technological superiority became liabilities. Internal rebellion accelerated as Imperial forces lost coordination and communication. Supply lines were disrupted by human raids, and loyalist systems became increasingly isolated. Governors who once enforced imperial rule saw the humans as the rising authority and switched allegiances preemptively. This domino effect meant that the Empire was fighting not only an external enemy, but an internal collapse. Entire sectors fell without a fight, leaving the Imperial Navy overstretched and vulnerable. By the time humans approached the capital world of Imperia Prime, the Empire was in full disarray. The once mighty fleets were fractured, the central command ineffective, and the ruling council paralyzed by fear and indecision. Rourke's approach was precise. He targeted command centers, communications arrays, and logistical hubs rather than attempting a frontal assault. In a single, coordinated campaign, humans disabled the Empire's ability to coordinate defenses, rendering even its strongest fleets ineffective. The capital, the symbol of millennia of unbroken rule, fell into human hands with minimal bloodshed. The collapse of the Empire was not merely military, it was ideological. The myth of invincibility had been shattered, replaced by the undeniable truth. Humans, underestimated and outnumbered, had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and courage could overcome even the greatest power in the galaxy. Systems that had once trembled at the mere mention of the Empire now celebrated humanity as liberators, and the stage was set for a new era in the galaxy's history. With the fall of the Galactic Empire, the galaxy entered an era no one could have anticipated. The humans, once underestimated and dismissed as primitive, had achieved the impossible. They had broken the greatest political and military power the galaxy had ever known. But unlike the Empire, humans did not seek to dominate through fear or coercion. They sought to create a galaxy where strength was measured not only by firepower, but by courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to face impossible odds. Commander. Isaac Rourke stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, looking out at the stars now quiet and free of Imperial patrols. The victory had been hard-won, but it had been strategic, not wanton. Every battle had been fought with precision and purpose, every system liberated rather than conquered. Humans had made a conscious choice to be liberators, not conquerors. Their reputation had spread across the galaxy as a species who fought fiercely when challenged, but governed with fairness and respect when victorious. Alien civilizations, long subjected to the Empire's tyranny, were now allies, partners, and observers of humanity's new order. They brought ships, technology, and knowledge to the human coalition, and in return, humans offered protection, trade opportunities, and self-governance. This collaborative approach to rebuilding the galaxy contrasted sharply with the Empire's method of ruling through fear, oppression, and rigid control. The humans' rise had not only ended the Empire, but had also rewritten the rules of interstellar politics. Humanity's greatest strength, Rourke knew, was not their ships or weapons. It was their unpredictability and resilience. Alien leaders had spent millennia analyzing enemy tactics and thinking in rigid patterns of power and hierarchy. Humans ignored these patterns. They innovated in real time, adapted to evolving circumstances, and turned disadvantages into advantages. Where the Empire had relied on conformity and procedure, humans relied on ingenuity, courage, and improvisation. This approach had created victories that seemed impossible on paper, but inevitable in practice. The galaxy's perception of strength began to change. Systems that had once measured power solely by fleet size and technological superiority now looked to human colonies as beacons of hope. Humans demonstrated that leadership could be earned through competence, adaptability, and vision rather than coercion. Their ability to inspire loyalty without intimidation challenged millennia of assumptions about how civilizations interacted on a galactic scale. The capital world, Imperia Prime, became the symbol of this transformation. Once the seat of the Empire's iron rule, it now housed a council comprised of humans and representatives from liberated systems. This council emphasized collaboration, transparency, and mutual defense. It was a radical departure from the Empire's secretive and centralized bureaucracy, demonstrating that governance could be effective without tyranny. Humans had proven that power was not in control alone. It was in earning trust, inspiring courage, and uniting disparate peoples for a common cause. The fall of the Empire also left a psychological legacy. Across the galaxy, countless species learned a lesson they would never forget. Underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. Stories of human ingenuity, daring tactics, and unyielding resilience spread through colonies, trade routes, and communications networks. Entire generations grew up knowing that a species previously considered weak could challenge the strongest power in existence and emerge victorious. This story would inspire countless individuals to challenge injustice, innovate beyond limitations, and embrace courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Humans themselves reflected on their achievement with humility. Commander Rourke understood that breaking the Empire was not an endpoint but a responsibility. Victory came with the duty to build a galaxy where potential was nurtured, where innovation was celebrated, and where fear did not dictate the course of civilizations. Humanity's role was no longer to dominate, but to guide, inspire, and defend. This philosophy became the cornerstone of their interactions with alien species, shaping diplomacy, trade, and exploration for centuries to come. In the quiet moments, aboard the Indomitable, Rourke contemplated the enormity of what humanity had accomplished. The Empire, a symbol of control and intimidation for millennia, had fallen. Not because of overwhelming numbers or advanced technology, but because humans thought differently. They used intellect, creativity, and sheer determination to overcome what others deemed impossible. They had redefined the rules of war and leadership, and in doing so, had redefined what it meant to be powerful in the galaxy. By the time humans were firmly established across liberated systems, the phrase, "the humans came and the Empire fell," became more than legend. It became truth, repeated across star systems, whispered in awe and admiration. Humanity had left a permanent mark on the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as exemplars of courage, resilience, and hope. The legacy of their actions was clear. Strength was not measured solely by weapons or numbers, but by the will to face impossibility, the creativity to adapt, and the vision to build a better future. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever,